Hello, friends. Robert Bevan here, author of the Caverns Creatures series of comedy, fantasy novels, and short stories. With me is Sam West, and today we're talking about the spell Mental Prison.
My brain is in jail. I don't know. This
That's what I
is
thought you were going to do.
great success. This is a sorcerer warlock wizard spell out of Tasha's Cauldron and everything, or Xanathar's, one of the two. I don't know. It's a recent printing. It has concentration up to an hour. Takes an action to cast 60-foot cast range, 6th level illusion. You attempt to bind a creature with an illusory cell that only it perceives. One creature you can see within range makes an int save. If it fails, it takes 5d10 psychic damage and half on a success. If it succeeds, the spell ends. So like it does half 5d10, spell's over. On a failed save, it takes 5d10 psychic damage, and you make it and the area immediately around its space appear dangerous in some way. You might cause the target to perceive itself being surrounded by fire, floating razors, or a hideous maw filled with dripping teeth. Whatever form the illusion takes, the target can't see or hear anything beyond it, and is restrained for the spell's duration. If the target is moved out of the illusion, makes a melee attack through it, or reaches any part of its body through it, it takes 10d10 psychic damage, and the spell ends.
All
First
right.
impressions.
I like it. I briefly glanced over your review before we started this, and you don't seem super keen on it.
I don't love effects that give the I'm a big Magic the Gathering guy, right? I enjoy that game quite a bit, and generally speaking, effects that let your opponent make the decision as what's best for them tend to be pretty bad because they'll always pick whatever decision is best in their scenario. So you're never getting the most devastating version of this spell versus the devastating version of the effect, I should say. This spell in that example, right, is either they're conditionally bound and restrained and don't do anything. That's one end of the condition, or 10d10 psychic damage the other end of it, right? So they get to pick basically which of those two modes they'd like to confront and deal with from a tactical perspective. And that's why I'm like, I'd rather it always do the 15d10 damage. That's what I wanted it to do. I wish it always did the restrained. Granted, I gotta give it this. Both effects are great. And both effects being great does make it a lot more castable. This isn't the kind of effect that I would never put on my sheet or wouldn't recommend people put on your sheet. It's just not my favorite style of spell.
2 points.
Okay.
First of all, do they know they're the subject of this spell? I mean, what they see is like razor blades or gaping maws or whatever. Like, do they really have a choice?
Yes.
Uh,
I would absolutely
Definitively, yeah.
say going from reality to no longer in reality is jarring and will very clearly tell you after the instantaneous moment of shock that something's amiss. And into that instance, wherever they can opt to try and break through the illusions. I would even say like dumb creatures, right? That would get horrified by it. If there's, depending on what environment they're surrounded by, a lot of them are going to try to take the proactive measure of, I can't see anything else. I'm getting out of danger. And the only way to get out of danger might be getting through danger. So like a T-Rex or an Ankylosaurus or some giant sack of hit points that's not that smart still is very likely to say, well, I'm not going to not move because being here doesn't seem good for me in a lot of instances. Now, there might be logical leaps that, some creatures make that keep them in place, sure. But I think most creatures with a reasonable int of like 7 or higher can discern this isn't real. How do I interact with it? And that's why I'm like,
What if you were, clever about it and you made the threat something that's feasible? Like,
that makes it a lot more interesting. But it also always will remove whatever they can only see the threat, right? It'll remove any amount of visible effects around it otherwise. So that does majorly hamper what you can creatively do with it. That being said, if you can work within those creative confines, you can get a little bit more juice out of the spell, and that does make it a little bit more interesting.
yeah. So, like, what about like a ring of fire? Okay, this is completely, I guess the wizard casts wall of fire and a ring around me. I can't see through the flames because they're giant flames.
Can't see
Do
through.
I really want to run into a fire?
You also can't see anything above you. You can't see the floor below you as normal things, right? Like all you can see is the danger. It makes that explicitly clear. Now that's me getting very rules lawyer nitpicky, but in some instances, you definitely could work with a DM to be a lot more flexible on that and make this a lot more fun to play with by having it be, it is reasonable to the wizard put a wall of fire there. And then you have to ask the question, well, now you're going to monster with the situation of do I just run through the wall of fire? And that answer still is probably likely yes, right? So there are going to be varying amounts of success that you're going to have with that. Now, this is more damage than a wall of fire does by a lot. Like I'm rolling right over that. Oh yeah, they'll just take the damage. 15d10 is a lot of damage. For a 6th level spell, this is like a truck. This, like, Disintegrate does a boatload of damage. This is on the same level as Disintegrate as far as, like, huge chunk of damage. So if what you want is a huge chunk of damage, and you're okay saying, if it's just Restrained for a while, that's fine too, this spell absolutely will deliver for you. Because, like, an average 15d10 is 82. And 82 is a huge chunk of damage. So, you know, big
All
perk
right.
to it.
Point number 2. You argue that this gives the target agency, and I don't know if that's necessarily always true, because you cast this spell. If you choose to, you could you have, say you have the feet telekinetic. You could just yoink them right out of there. That doesn't say it has to be voluntary movement. It's
That's
just,
true.
and in fact, it specifically says if they are moved, like in the passive voice there. So yeah, I mean, you could just cast this and then yoink them right out of it, give them the full damage. They don't get a choice.
I will say this damage is a lot less exciting if it's contingent on 2 actions. So if you need to spend actions doing that, I'm a little bit less excited by it, but it's still enough damage that it's fine and cool, right? Like, it's not the end of the world. I agree that's a neat way you can do it. And if you want a payoff for a shoving kind of build, or you want reasons to make your telekinetic a little bit better, this does do that, right? It also then can double as sometimes something does get terrified and stay within it, and it doesn't take the 15d10 damage to get utterly decimated. That's also a small upside the spell has.
Yeah. See, I compare this to banishment. You know, for potentially taking one creature out of the fight for a little while. But I like this a lot better. It's not perhaps as effective, but I don't like the idea of banishment. If I have an enemy trying to kill me, I don't want to send it off to some other place. I want to kill it. And this banishment would rob me of the kill. And, you know, they might go someplace nice with that.
And, I mean, they're probably coming back after a minute, as long as they're not of the plane you send them to or whatever, right? Like, most of the things come back from banishment, and then you just wail on them whenever they return. That's the whole perk of it is you remove one of the threats and deal with the rest of them, and the one threat returns. It's not nearly as threatening without its friends. So this is, I think, a lot closer to like a hold monster is where I think Mental Prison sort of lines up well as, where it's you have a debilitating condition on one thing that's probably going to kill it. Hold monster is a 5th level spell, so like, and it hits everything. Like, yes, this hits everything, but this always is half of 5d10 damage, which is a nice perk to it, right? I'm sorry, it always takes 5d10 damage, agnostic of it. It doesn't have it on failed save, or on a pass, I mean. It always takes 5d10 psychic damage. But, like, that is a great upside over something like Hold Monster, where it sometimes does nothing whenever it fires. At the same time, Hold Monster's cheaper and probably good enough. It's going to be pretty fun to watch all of your buddies just absolutely crit the crap out of it. If you want to be the center of attention, I think Mental Prison is going to make that more of a you show. If you want everyone to have a big team moment where you just dunk on the Basilisk, the Hold Monster is going to kind of do the same thing. That being said, I'm comparing this to one of the best spells at its level in the game, so like that should be a ringing endorsement. This spell can be very powerful. I think it's slightly overcosted, but then again, it does do a boatload of damage, so, you know.
I don't think it's overcosted at all. I think it's appropriate.
Yeah, maybe.
I mean, if they choose, yeah, like I said, they get a choice, maybe, but both choices are pretty freaking rough. Yeah, they either take a shit ton of damage or they're restrained, and your party can still wail on them.
True.
Yeah, they'll get restrained. They get an advantage on attacks against it.
I believe so. Yeah.
I think that's good enough, and they can't really fight back, or else take the damage. Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. But yeah, I'm happy with this one. This one makes me smile.
I think this spell is for people, not me. I think this is a good spell that is in a circumstance that I don't love not having immediate agency of getting exactly what I want out of it whenever I cast it. Whenever I cast this, I have to go, okay, one of 2 things is going to happen, and I might not like that outcome as much as I want. I want to cast a spell and go, this is the exact outcome that I'm producing. This is exactly as I wanted it to go. Right? That's what I want out of my spells when I cast them. And that's not what this offers.
The same argument could be made for Hold Monster, except one of those options is nothing.
Sure. This also still falls in the caveat of if they pass the save, 5d10 damage for a 6th level spell, it still isn't that exciting. It is way more exciting than nothing. That's definitely got a big check going for it. This is something where if you are jaded by Saber Dies because you cast them and nothing happens, you're like, oh my god, I wasted a 5th level spell slot. You will feel less bad whenever this misses because it has the 5d10 damage attached to it. I really wish, and I hope whatever they're revising the hold spells down the road, that they give them even on pass, they are momentarily like given some penalty so you don't feel like you've wasted your resource. This definitely wastes the resource entirely.
I don't know about for hold spells because, the upside of that is so they're dead.
The upside of this is they're dead. It's 15d10 damage at its best, right? Like 82 damage kills most mid-CR things. Like if you're using this on anything but a boss, it ends its life. If you use this on a boss, it does 5d10 damage, then you legendary resistance it, right? Like that's just how it has to work. So that is a big endorsement for it. I was probably too harsh in my review of it. I don't personally like it, but it probably is a very powerful spell. I have yet to see it cast. I imagine if I did, I'd be like, oh yeah, okay, that was nasty. This does utterly decimate the specific monster.
Right. Well, there's not a whole lot of text here, so I think we've covered everything. You got a rating?
I think this probably deserves a 4. You talked me up from a 3. I think it in the same camp as Hold Monster. Like when this hits something, it just destroys it. Now, it being a 6th level spell slot is a lot. It's a high level spell, right? This is a costly effect, but you are definitely getting a 6th level spell's worth of juice out of both ends of this. Even like 5d10 damage plus an hour-long restrain, if that is what happens, is definitely worth a 6th level spell slot. If it instead just is a 6th level spell slot for a bigger Disintegrate, yep, I'm all on board. That sounds fine to me. I just wish I could always pick the bigger Disintegrate or always pick the hour-long restrain. Not being able to make that choice makes me annoyed.
Yeah, it doesn't bother me at all. I'm giving it a 5. This is a spell that makes me smile. I like the options. I like the...
It's a little bit disturbing that it's a
like
spell that makes you smile, because you're putting a creature in a horrific situation where daggers and knives are consuming it.
That's what I was going to say. I like the options. I like the flavor.
Sure. I do think this is a very meaningful upper tier illusionist damage effect, because they are kind of sorely missing that. So having effects that give illusionists actual teeth to contribute in damaging fights, that's pretty important. I'm glad this exists for that reason.
All right. Well, that was Mental Prison. Thank you, Sam, and thank you, everyone, for joining us. Let us know what you think of Mental Prison down in the comments below. Like and subscribe to the channel and all that, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye. Thank you for watching. If you found this helpful, informative, or entertaining, I'd really appreciate it if you hit the like button below. You needn't smash it. A gentle tap will suffice. If you want to see more videos like this, subscribe to the channel. And make sure you check out the links in the description, where you'll find my Caverns Creatures series of comedy fantasy novels, Sam's full review of the spell, and other fun things.